I'll intro this a little bit by saying the first time we connected was on a stream. I think it was on Christian Golden's uh,
Yeah.
Apologia.
Agapologia. Hmm.
Try to get that right for him. But and I was watching back through it uh, to kind of get a little prep for this uh, that stream, and I remember you saying like there were things I didn't hear that first time, but that is one of the reasons you moved to where you came to.
If you just brought a stranger off and said, "Here, come look at these YouTube videos," my thing is to say you would start with waking from the meaning crisis videos. But that's my bias. That's my cards on the table. Some would say,
Why
"Well,
is
look at the
that?
JP videos."
Why would you choose the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis video?
I think because the Fourier cognitive science and the Vervaekean language and vocabulary that he lays down, I think it's undeniable that Pageau, PVK, and JP thrive on that. Their work and minds and own cognition have flourished off of that it's its own like fractal of its own Silk Road. I think it's perfect why JV's doing his own Silk Road is because man he laid the first digital Silk Road that is connecting this TLC, this meta community of smaller online communities, between Vervaeke Foundation, Symbolic World, TLC, whatever they may be.
Yeah,
That was the other thing. The big thing of this week seems to be wanting to name this thing, wanting to name. I'm like, I don't think I think we're underestimating the mysterious nature of how things come into existence.
Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.
There we are. We're recording. Yeah, you were saying, Matthew, that the YouTube behind the scenes stuff. It's the first time I was on a podcast was with Chad on Friday Morning Nameless, and there was this backstage thing like you're seeing on StreamYard or whatever. And I was like, oh, I'm backstage. I remember being backstage. This is cool.
There you go.
That's how it struck me, anyways. So,
No, that's perfect. It's even worse for me. It's such a boogeyman. I've got a little channel set
mhm.
up to do just conversations I'd want to do, but I wanted to do like an opening monologue, to open the channel. I didn't press record like for 3 times. I ran the monologue like 3 times without just total, just stepping on a rake and just totally like threw my hands up. It was like, this is obvious a sign from God, whatever.
Yeah,
Maybe
man.
we'll try it again another weekend, but
Oh, yeah. That's
that's the YouTube behind the scenes stuff for me.
forgetting to press record. Yeah, it's a weird thing because I'm like, okay, here's Matt. We've talked. So I mean, I'll go back. Is Matt who? What? You're written Matthew here. So Matthew Parlato.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
I know he's a Texan, and
Freshly minted on the driver's license. Driver's license
oh,
just came in.
congratulations.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I was born in Texas, actually. So I only lived there till I was 4. My brother's moving back from Texas currently, so but I'm in Arkansas, so we're not well too far apart. It depends on what part of Texas you live in.
Well, I tell you what, that might be my ultimate landing ground is Arkansas or maybe Louisiana. Just affordability and I think
Mm,
just God's country kind of thing.
mm.
Not to get down this strict materialistic kind of view, but the world is taking a place where a lot of places are expensive. Though Texas has a lot. Texas has a lot of land.
Yeah.
But yeah, I came to West Texas on like
Hmm.
on a mission.
Looking for that ordered life, maybe. I think, yeah, you were hitting on that. Go ahead and just unpack that.
There was just ordered life is an instantiation of it. I think the mission for more, the mission for on a mission for community, on kind of in a weird way, found an amazing church and priest here that I'm just been blown away with, that I'm really, really trying to urge my way into, remember embody and get more participation in that church community. I think Catholic Church can be a little bit more standoffish in that regards, or maybe it's just my personal and family's experience with how we engaged in church life. But yeah, no, it basically, look, it was like this. I was in a job, I'm in construction. I work with my hands, so you can only make me sweat for my living so much, is what I say. So I was doing residential construction, carpentry, cabinets, and window work, door work, and it was the same kind of thing, man. Just didn't have a real good friend group. Wasn't really feeling the progress in the dating realm. I mean, and we share so much in this TLC, background knowledge. We kind of can piece together a lot of the cultural, toxicities and cultural historical issues that are going on. But the issue remains, just wasn't really enjoying where I was in my little, you know, sphere of comfort. And so I prayed about it for 2 weeks, and I had this real big job opportunity out here in West Texas, building a air capture facility, big vacuum tower to clean the air. And God answered. And after 2 weeks of praying, he answered very cryptically. He said, "You'll find what you're looking for there." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm looking for this money, God. So let me go make this money." And it was a big hit. It was, hit the ground running, jump new trade. Was a hit on the job site out of 300 men, but was in a kind of a squirrely low man on a totem pole crew. And people have their issues and their vices, and I, our bottom crew was really being tormented with one of the main crew leaders. And I wouldn't put up with it. After about the rule of number 3, I kind of spoke up.
Mm.
And speaking up was twisted and manipulated into some kind of threat. And anyways, I lost the job within like 2 months. So I came here in West Texas to make all this money. Didn't pan out. And but still kind of, through what I give a lot of credit to TLC and these past 5, 6, 7 year journey on really fortifying my spiritual life, my emotional life, my worldview. Was able to kind of take that on the chin. I mean, really, really just appreciated that. Hey, man, I know I busted my butt there. I know the irony of it is, the day before the incident popped off, I had started a group chat with like 20 gentlemen out of a 300-man job site for a basketball meetup. We were all going to go play basketball on the weekends. So that's how good of a thing I had going there, just within
Mm.
the first couple months. And it all got took from me. So God reminded me that that's not obviously what I was looking for. I was not looking. And it makes so much sense. I would brag to guys around the job site and stuff about, we're making all this money, and I don't need the money.
Mm.
The JV quote of or the JV reminding of Socrates, uh would go. I believe I might be misquoting. I hate when I do that. But going into the market and saying, "Look at all the things I don't need." Just
Mm.
really, really understanding what you need in your life, and then what are kind of just fanciful wants, or luxuries and stuff like that you can kind of really uh, way better. You can proportion them better in your life. I think is the better response, because obviously you're going to want some things, right? We are humans, we have desires. Anyways, so I got back into the job field here, jumped fields again. Now I'm doing mechanic work for a pipe company out in West Texas in the energy industry. It took about 2 months for me to wow them with my work ethic and my character and worldview. Again, a lot of credit to this little corner that that all that stuff oozes off from me. People talk about some of this fanciful stuff that is so abstract. I'm like, I think it's so hilarious. I work with, roughnecks, and I synthesize and bring this stuff down to their level all the time,
Yeah.
any chance I can, all the time. It's once a week where I get to stumble into a corner or a rabbit hole where I'm like, oh man, I'm really going to get to spring some goods on this guy. I'm really going to bring up, some philosophical or theological, aspect here, and very it's not like these people look at me. I'm sure in some regards they look at me like, what the heck? But
Mhm.
they're understanding the communication. The dialogue is there. Anyways, so yeah, that's the West Texas kind of journey. They gave me I'm driving a company vehicle now. I'm getting a company card. Uh, running my own department there. We basically, these long lines of composite poly pipe, just miles and miles of it. Every few hundred meters or so, you got to kind of couple them together, and we have equipment that crimps those couplings, and I take care of that equipment.
Well, there you go.
Woohoo! I get a lot of grease on my hands.
Yeah, man. Well, that's, so I want to back up because I think the thing that well, for one, you were the first person that emailed my channel email in this TLC. And that was I was like probably a month and a half ago. I mean, it's pretty early, and you said, "Hey man, would you be wanting to have a conversation about this stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I didn't hear from you again. I don't know if like it was kind of got weird or it didn't go through or something. But then I reached out again or something. But you were like the first person, and in that stream that we were in on Christian Golden's channel, I did feel connected to you. I felt connected to what you were talking about, and so I wanted to kind of further the conversation. And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating was that you responded on like one of my videos, and then in that conversation, and even what you have here on your little tag is fellow of John Vervaeke. I want you to share the story because you said he kind of brought you back to Christianity or something like that. And in light of his recent conversation with Jordan Hall, which I'm sure, yeah, you wrote the beautiful piece of art, I think was your comment on that, something along those lines. And
Yes.
I want to hear that story. I want to know that story. I want to get that story out. How
Yeah.
John Vervaeke got you to, because everyone else is Jordan Peterson, and this
Yeah.
is you.
The email thing is mostly just I'm terrible at communicating through email, and I've got this big responsibility with the new job and stuff, and
Mhm.
the energy industry is one thing I'm finding is very bureau. We'll find a lot of this philosophy stuff comes
I
in
work
handy.
in
Very
healthcare, dude.
bureaucratized.
I work in
Say
healthcare.
again.
I work in
There you go.
healthcare.
Very bureaucratized, lots of paperwork. I mean, as much grease as I
Mhm.
get on my hands, I'm also doing paperwork and checking emails and stuff. So
Mhm.
I hopefully I'll get a lot better with that. Chad, the alcoholic, has probably the exact same complaint on me.
Ah,
Yes, I did want to did want to reach out, and I mentioned I just kind of in our behind the uh, behind the scenes conversation a little bit. I would have just chatted, just without even the recording, man. Because I mean, it can be. Not only did I just move my whole life, but yeah, man, this existence can be lonely. I mean, I think that's one of the things we touch on a lot is intimacy crisis. The atomized individual, blah blah blah. But yeah, anyways, the JV aspect. Yeah, and I do want to also kind of recognize there there is the I think some people in the corner go with the go with the Jordan Peterson sphere, and I think there is an acknowledgement that he made the manifestation of this YouTube existence where he was, he kind of had his public moment dealing with some controversy, and then he had a backlog of a bunch of really good content that we could all go research and really dig into this human. But the fact remains is that kind of that's not where I would say my spiritual journey really took off. Where I identified is, and I guess you could always, where do you draw the lines on start to, where are you saying something begins precisely can kind of get messy. But the fact remains is when I ran into Awakening from the Meaning Crisis material, I was already on, the Buddhist psychog constellation is there for a reason. They're pumping it in our students in our universities for a reason. It's very much the it's like what is it? Anti-xenophobia kind of thing. It's like the opposite of, it's almost, you very much anything that's original and home to your identity is very, overlooked or poo-pooed, and the culture just de facto. I mean, we can get into a lot of the details and messiness of that as well. Perhaps another conversation. But anyways, so I was on this, very much a kind of a new age journey, and stumbled into some Buddhism stuff, and meditation was working very, very well for me. This was a lot of this seamlessly, the spiritual and philosophical journeys kind of seamlessly go for me. I have I have a high need for cognition. So even the new age stuff that I was touching on was very, very just the very basic stuff of like, I mean, I can remember the one quote I would hang on to, and looking back, it's just it's so obvious and so new age. It's like, oh yeah, you were gonna stumble into the go full blown mystic. It just was a matter of time. It was like we're all made of stardust, kind of stuff. Once you can deconstruct all the blurry borderlines, you can then start molding them however you want. And the Pageau moves to deconstruct all the way, is to deconstruct all those, even the molding, deconstruct that as well. And you just end up embodied. It's very, very sophisticated trick he does. But so the new age Buddhist stuff really paid attention to the psychological lessons that 300 hours of Jordan Peterson lectures. You're not going to just not learn a lot about psychology, but still, just like I said, was wanting more, and I'll even give you the moment that I knew something was different. It's the first episode when he starts connecting the patterns, and when we start tracking the moon with our basic calendars, and the very basic symbolic artificing of figurines and stuff. These, and by the way, you can just hear the Pageau echoing or foreshadowed in some of this stuff. And so I was hooked at that point, because in that new age and psychology kind of movement, you're very much leaning on the evolutionary biology substrate. And so when JV kind of tags into that and then builds out of that, this mystical, it's just it's undeniable. It was totally transformative. I've been on air. I've told people I've watched that series in full, probably 5 times. Different episodes, probably more like 6 or 7 times. Probably a ridiculous amount. For my job, I can kind of put in earbuds and kind of tune out, especially for workout stuff too. It can just be kind of therapeutic. But yeah, and then the back end of that series is very, very high end, cutting edge cognitive science stuff. And this is where I think the meat of kind of my shtick for JV in the corner is that he can be that religio, haha. He can be that connective tissue for the very analytical, very left brain saturated, human that is still wanting to strive and reach out and connect and navigate, forward and towards, maybe a more holistic, more spiritual, more Christian, more however, more theologically infused, more right brain balanced, kind of worldview and stance, or even just entertain the conversations. The T Grog phenomena is like, if people aren't pointing him to John Vervaeke's cognitive science, then you're doing a disservice. The whole thing is disingenuous, in my opinion. I mean, that's if this guy's going to come in here and be like, rationality, give me some logic, okay, go talk to Dr. John Vervaeke, and use all those words you want to use, and you will go run into one of the most sophisticated minds today, who's going to recapitulate and present to you one of the most robust and and I think proper worldview and schema and scaffolding for turning what you are thinking it as nonsense into sense. And he has a little a saying on that is, I think a good wisdom tradition takes nonsense, turns nonsense into sensical, or nonsense making into sense making, something in that regard. I'm really off on my quotes today. but uh but yeah, so basically, just walk down that path. Took the Neoplatonism to heart. Went with the historical and cultural arguments of that Neoplatonism, and taking the Pageau advice, reading the Church Fathers. I got a Saint Gregory of Nyssa book up there. I got I think another Eric of Acusa coming. The Gregory of excuse me, Saint Maximus. Book as well coming. I'm trying to catch up on my uh, church fathers. Right now, I'm stuck with the headiness of the Heidegger Neoplatonism and history of being. So that one's in the middle of that. But anyways, so followed this Neoplatonism rigid philosophical journey, and just I was able to make the last jump. I feel like that's probably the meat of the journey, is that I was able to take my hero's system, still to this day, I call him, my philosophical hero, my intellectual hero. Anything he's putting out, I'm trying to stay on top of it, though he's very prolific, like other people. Um, I was able to basically take the way I kind of distill it is the metaphor, the profound metaphorical nature of our cognition, and then also the fractal nature of relationality, as the most supreme relation I know of is a relation to another human. I was able to distill that into, that's the Christian relationship to God. And that was, and you sometimes you think things are road to Damascus. And here's the thing is, I've had transformative moments. I've dabbled in some psychedelics and blah blah blah. And I've had ego deaths without psychedelics. If you do some gnarly enough stuff in your life, you can have an ego death without psychedelics.
Yeah.
Like I've lived that. Um,
Yeah, I have to.
yeah, I've heard some of yours exactly. Yeah. Anyways, and so it wasn't this like explosive moment. The more explosive moment was the uncovering the depth that I knew I was finna fall in love with the work of John Vervaeke. It was much more of a slow burn, the actual transformation into coming back to Christ, coming back to, picking up a book about Zen Christianity to kind of walk me, because I had deconstructed so far, my rationale, well, my left-brainedness had deconstructed so rapidly that, it's like, I could take the Protestant arguments, full to bear, and I feel like I could take them further. Um, and so there was just kind of this seamless philosophical and theological journey, to where I was able to just kind of take the off ramp. I mean that's not a great metaphor of it with John, but basically take his worldview and his schema, and this kind of sounds arrogant now I'm saying it. Put it on my tombstone. This is why we have to have conversations. Maybe have a little bit of a Jordan Hall moment before Jordan Hall. Now that I think about it, now that I'm kind of explicitly articulating it, because I was as much, and I think this is why we have to have a conversation. I think that's why I did really appreciate that conversation between them two, because I was like, man, I was so curious about Jordan's perspective, but I was so appreciative of like, man, I needed to hear, or not needed.
You
I
might have.
loved hearing.
Yeah.
Say it again.
You might have needed it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, in a certain construal, I like that. I like that. Uh, it was, yeah. I'm just going to use the word. I needed to hear where John was, and I feel like that's what that conversation was, folks. It's
Hmm.
like John was saying, "Hey, here, friend, I've in a technical way, some people could say that we have moved away from each other. I want to plant my flag, say, here I am, so we can make sure we have a good, uh, thread of contact, thread of communication." And it was like, man, it was artwork, it
Yeah.
was beautiful to hear.
If there was a spot towards the end of it, it was really at the end of it, and Jordan says something about if you take what I said and you take what you said and we put those things together, wow. And when it cut back to Vervaeke, there was this happiness that I could see, like a visible, like we're okay. I don't, like there was something that was really really beautiful about their friendship on display,
Yeah.
and the care that was given in the conversation, extremely powerful that way. And I think that off ramp is a perfectly good metaphor because he talks about the Silk Road. So it's like
There
you
you
off
go.
ramped the Silk Road. That's
There you go.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was fascinating to me is because there is a lot of, I'm like even one of our comment sections interactions. My introduction through this was a lot of Jordan Peterson, and was through ego death that way. It wasn't from the I was pretty in a lot of areas of my life pretty straight laced and never had like psychedelic trips or been in the, so far away from like in another religious tradition. So I feel like that's why it was more about me as an individual reconciling with my own integrity, which was kind of his big project, Peterson's. And so it was
Yes,
really,
yes.
yeah. So it was really interesting when I bumped into you and you were one of the few people that I've engaged with or seen engaged that's really was hitting the Vervaeke thing with Christianity. And then the other person would be somebody like Jordan, I think, and that's what you said, because even further back in that last part of what you were saying, that's what it sounded like to me was the conversation I had. And so that's why I think it was something you needed to hear, that conversation, because of being in that space, So what did you hear? Where was he at, Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of this stuff is very, it's very, very abstract and heady, right? But I would say, I mean, I mean, I could be the best for this or the worst for this because I was able to follow him all that way and then make that little distillate move and then flipping. I was like, oh, Christianity makes so much sense. The way I see it is that it's just this inversion, and maybe that is too simplistic. I'm sure it is, but he's stuck on this. He's stuck on that the relation and he just did this video on pure relationality, which is very much touched on in the book I'm reading. And he was referencing, they were one of the uh, conversations he just did. They were conversing about an essay and the book that I am reading right now. But anyways, so it's it's the it's the profound nothingness that relationality collapses into. Whereas you can spin that on its head and say relationality also is built into the divine oneness that is the wet. Yeah, it's this that it, it's this inexhaustibility. It's this inexhaustibility that can kind of be turned on its head. Okay, it's the Western Abrahamic God has an inexhaustible nature to it, and yet the Zen the Zen shunyata, the profound emptiness that is liberating, that you can say that it's this combinatorial explosivity. You can look at it forever and you will never have the whole thing. And so I think that's an inversion and look, I'm not the artist, so I will throw up my hands here. When I met Pageau's work, something about a helix stuck in my brain, in my very
mhm.
non-imagistic brain. But there's something about an inversion of that nothingness to profound oneness, to profound creation. And I think here's why that hits for me is because I think it also it permeates the theology and philosophy as well. And many minds have said Christianity and the Hinduism and the Vedas, that tripartite really those hit home as profound and as deep as we can get, because there's there's a denial and a removal of creation and experience that the East really, really harps on. Like the Zen is like, hey, you can always tear away. You can always point at how this is not the exact thing. And see where the West comes in, I think, is we have this thing called negative theology. We have, I think it's called the apathetic faith, right? It's like the way we talk about God is we point at what is not God. And so, but so there is this inversion of that. The West still acknowledges that there is this the one. Plotinus is the one. We still put it's kind of and look, in my weird brain, it kind of all makes sense because I'm like, well, yeah, you guys, we're putting a name on the thing that cannot be named, right? And so we're doing this very paradoxical thing where it's like almost the East is more comfortable sitting in that paradox. And so
It
that's
is.
where I think. That's where I think JV would stand if I had to do my best fellow of JV recapitulation.
That's awesome. And it's the thing, as I started processing this stuff out loud, the stuff that was coming up with me, especially after right when I hopped on the kind of connecting to the TLC, this little corner was Jai West. That the video, I don't know if you saw this, he's an Asian actor.
I have not.
And you should look at it. It's on my last video that I just released. There's a link in the description.
Okay.
But Jai West, WST, and it's about the East and the West, and he's speaking in English half the time. He's speaking in I think Japanese. He might have even spoken French at one point. I don't know, and then he's like black and white all the way down. And he's in like a wedding dress and a suit or a tuxedo, and it's this back and forth. And I can't understand half of it. He does mention Jordan Peterson, but it just was like this thing that was getting in my mind about, and I think with the Greek or the Eastern Orthodox and what's happening, that it's happening in the West right now, and what we're kind of seeing like in this space with Jonathan and Vervaeke is, well, Jordan is kind of a master of the West. Jordan Peterson, he kind of mastered it with his conversations with New Atheism in that realm of proposition and distilling it down to where, okay, you have the individual now. And I guess like the East is like, well, what about the nothing? What about the everything? It's like this. And then you're inverting it in the gospel of Jesus. The cross is, I mean, you were talking about that theologically. That's where where do those intersections happen? And I've heard my whole life, like the cross turned everything upside down. Like it inverts power, it inverts, the self. It does all those things. If this is God lowering himself to the greatest shame, like how does that work? Glory and shame. Like there's just, so that's kind of what I'm hearing when I hear that, and that's a symbol, but it's also a reality.
Pageau.
Yeah,
Yep.
It's a symbol and it's a reality, and you can look into that. And even in that Jordan Hall conversation with Vervaeke, that was where he took this symbolic into reality, and then he also tied that into the part that you were talking about the personal and the relational side of the Trinity, but also the thing that hit me, one of the things that hit me early on in my ego death was just basically all my faith, it could be tied up in the fact that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Like that I am truth, a person. I am a way, the way, I am life, like, and finding that in a person, like not in a path necessarily, but in a person. And that's what I think you were kind of hitting on, that this personal, relational. And it's so funny because I don't know what your background is, but growing up Southern Baptist, everything's about, you need to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
I grew up in the Baptist South, but not Southern Baptist.
Okay.
So I can still relate.
Yeah, so it's like, here we are talking esoterics. And then I also, that's the weird thing about this space is, like I said, I wasn't very secular in the sense of like not being around religious stuff. So when I'm hearing the esoteric like coming into it, I'm also hearing the, real jargony theological vernacular that was coming up at the same time. It's really
See,
interesting.
well, and I was just gonna say, I mean, this is where I get at my edge of my, and I always do the here comes the Christianity disclaimer because I've,
Mm,
come back to Christianity so recently, was really not a heavy Catholicized family when I was,
mm,
young and identifying as a Christian. Still am so biblically illiterate. I mean, it's shameful the level of biblical illiteracy I have. But I will say this on my edge here is like this is one of the things, and I think this is something that we've kind of been touching in TLC about the religion that's not a religion, kind of is Christianity, is that Christianity does this. And again, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I guess you could just chalk a lot of my Christianity up to Pageau. He's been so fundamental in my worldview, and I do. We could circle back to the symbolic stuff because I think there's so much, and this is from the JV guy. I think there's so much profundity in that symbolic stuff that just I don't know how. I think it gets a little bit washed over because it's so dense. It's so dense of how profound that the symbolic understanding and how, like, there's a reason a cutting edge cognitive science is referencing Jonathan Pageau in his world class series. There's a reason. We might could do a whole nother conversation on that. But anyways, I wanted to just touch on this. There's something that Christianity smashes so much of that. Like when you were saying the esoteric and the personal come, like there was just something about the Pageau image of like you said with that cross, Jesus on that cross really just, there's something in Christianity that kind of melts a lot of borders or something that, or maybe better is that puts things in their proper place and orients them. Because yeah, it's like at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. It's like what got me and what drug me here is this really cutting edge, rigorous, sophisticated theological argument. Like, man, I'll throw a shout out here is Luke Thompson. I think
mm-hmm.
a week ago, in about 90 seconds, and he might have been reading this book that I just showed. Referenced a rigorous philosophical breakdown of the symbolic notion of the Trinity in 90 seconds, using terminology that anybody should any basic mathematical mind should be able to understand. And I'm telling you, it blew me away. And so there's this level of the rigor is here, and the rigor brought me here, but it's also there's this magic, and I think this is what TLC also kind of hits on. There's this magic of the person. One of the reasons I had a bummy week, man. I was so excited to click on this stream because I was like, man, I'm gonna get to talk to a human that we share so much of, that I know. Look, I know if this conversation. Look, it's even getting me emotional. I'm gonna, we're Italians, we wear
Yeah.
our emotions on our sleeve. And now I do the self-referential thing about being emotional. But the point is, as I know if this conversation went to a corner, we would be able to have that moment. That's why I clicked on this morning. I said, man, again, here's the need. I don't really like that word right now, but it keeps coming to my mind. I needed this conversation this morning. I wanted it so bad. I was like, at the, and I think I emailed you too. I was like, man, we don't even have to, we don't got to put it up. I need the human connection at this stage of decay in this culture, and even on my journey, like I said, I'm struggling in my church family, and maybe I'll have to evolve and search further out. Though I've been so impressed with the priest, I think he's going to be a big help for me on that path. But yeah, so there's this magic of this relational human connection that it's like that is the I mean, I don't want to say the soul, but that is one of the things that Jesus alone puts in a theological aspect. It's like you don't get that from. I mean, I'm not okay. I'll just do the lived experience. You didn't get that from the Buddhist thing. There was a mental gymnastics, a construal level that you could kind of do with, like, this selfish, unselfish thing, but I feel like it's much more fundamental. Let me just be, let me take a step back. I think it's just more fundamental to the Christian theology. Don't want to be too critical.
Yeah, well, that's the understanding of the Trinity,
Yeah.
and that's a fundamental for most of us here. But needing.
But you say that,
Well,
but you
no.
say that because I didn't expect that on my when I went down the rabbit hole of those videos, Christian. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect me to be, I'll even do this thing. I was a lurker for a long time, and even not too long because Paul grew on me quickly, but for a little while there, I wasn't even that impressed with Paul Vanderklay, PVK, one of the central figures here. I even had to get kind of put in my place and and be humbled and kind of come to terms with like, no, there's wisdom here, and there's a, I won't even say wisdom, there's a magic here, because Paul is one of the threads that brought me all the way down to like, hey, no, Christianity is your home.
Mm,
I think there's probably a seamless, happening there. I can put you the date that I went back to church. It's probably almost exactly a year now, maybe just a little bit over a year now. But was going to meditate, and it wasn't working in a communal aspect, so I just went to a church to meditate and just never left.
mm.
Anyways, I interrupted you, Christian.
No, it's all right. Going to a church to meditate. I want to come back to that. But the
Well, you
relational.
were saying about the relationality, how
Yeah,
it's
so
that's
it's fundamental, and I want to hit on two thoughts on that. Is one with your church, and then one with the TLC, this little corner. Is that the conversation last week I had with Noah Foxman? I would say Noah, President Foxman. His name's Noah. Is
I just started it. I haven't finished.
it's difficult to find a conversation, embodied conversation partner about something that you've put into your brain for the last 5 to 7 years that is super high. There's language, there's science, there's a lot of things that maybe on the bell curve the average person's not necessarily paying attention to for whatever reasons, and it's hard, or they don't want to even, maybe they don't want to admit that they've been paying attention to it yet. So it's hard to find. I mean, it's hard to find that embodied. But when you do, and if you can, and if you do, that you cultivate and you cherish the person in that. And then second is, not all relationships that's not the need for every relationship either. There's like a hierarchy of relationships. I think that where, it is okay to shoot the shit about the game, and you need that too. Like, you need to my wife reminds me to come out of this space sometimes, so that's those. And in the church is built up with that. And I do hope that you can develop a good relationship with your priest. And so that's an encouragement that I have been walking through, but also I've been, so a buddy of mine from college, very, very close friend, he texted me while I was at work last week, and he's like, WTF, bro? And I was like, uh-oh, he just saw the podcast. And he did. He's like, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, are you going to be on Joe Rogan? He's making all these jokes. And
What's new?
and it's funny though, because it made me go back to a memory from after my ego death that we mentioned earlier, and there's videos on that on my channel, but a years-long season of loneliness and not a lot of relationality. And I feel like entering into this space, and even going to Symbolic World Summit, I feel like I'm having an explosion of relationality around this stuff. But I remember going to sleep after work one night, probably 3-4 years ago. I couldn't remember the last time somebody texted me. Like it had been months, just, hey, what's up? Because my life was so disconnected from, I worked weekend nights, not in the town I live in. And I was just focused. I was really focused a lot on my family relationships and those types of things. But I went to sleep thinking, I just don't know if anyone cares. And it was like a prayer kind of type thing. And I woke up And there were 2 text messages from 2 friends the next day. And one of them was the guy that just texted me this week, which is why I say that. But that this journey, we have these seasons, man. And in this search, that it sounds like you're in a search, you know, you're in an on the ground search, and even it costs you something with your job to just stay faithful. And like, here we are, like, I like here we are, dude. I immediately connected. This is something I'm trying to hold on to in this space and in this, put it out there in content world and all this stuff. I was like, man, I really connected with Matthew, like on that stream that night. And I wanted more of this conversation with you as a person, because I don't know, you were saying things that I agreed with, but were from another angle. And yeah, I don't know. That's just what I wanted to get out about relationships and about the space and being on a journey of, sometimes we go through lonely seasons, and they can shape us in good ways, but that doesn't mean it's a type of suffering sometimes, you know. So
That means a lot. And yeah, that's helpful. The season is helpful. Even in this moment, it's already bringing me some relief, because seasons end. Seasons, come to an end, and a new season comes. So
yeah, man.
yeah.
And I'll say this, 2 days ago on Luke Thompson and Grail Country, a gentleman named Tim was on there, and he was talking to Matt C, and he just got brutally honest. And there were tears, and he talked about being lied to by the church, and that he has Christianity's baked into him, but he doesn't, because of how he was raised, but he doesn't identify as a Christian. And it was just like, and Matt C was talking to him, and I don't care, dude. Like, and it's live. That was a live conversation, and I just was blown away by what was happening relationally.
Yeah. It's a superpower, and in this day and age, it's a superpower to have a place, what they call a safe space and a brave place, or brave place. But this place is kind of both, because if you do have to be brave here, but the optimal, let's do the JV thing, the optimal outcome for, unless you have that friend, like you said, that you can, have this relationship and these kind of conversations with, and I'm sure plenty of people do. And here's the other thing. I'm sure in different time periods and different circumstances, I'm sure there was different thresholds of this stuff. I mean, it's a unique time, and it's also, there's a lot of blessings to go with that unique time as well. But I would say is that this space can be you do need to be brave, but it also can, like I said, man, I had a real bum. I moved my whole life to West Texas for a job. It didn't work out. And I'm still here, loving Christ, still smile on my face. I got a great job, a different great job. Not quite the huge money maker that I had planned, that, all the plans of mice and men that I had planned on. But, it's there. If you're going to sit here and tackle these issues and have these vulnerable moments, I think this is the optimal place to do it. This is the optimal people to do it. I mean, there's a reason that my attention is drawn here. And here's the other thing. We don't talk about street wisdom and street philosophy, and we can maybe get into why, a lot of my personal and street philosophy journeys were before JP. I'd done ruined and started to build my life back up before I ever clicked on a Jordan Peterson YouTube video. But some of that stuff coincides. I'll give some credit there. But But for sure, he definitely made me pay attention onto some YouTube stuff. Like I said, and where you start to draw a journey is interesting. But my point is there's a magic of being able to get on here and not only have the rigor of dealing with real, profound ideas, but also the care and love of like, hey man, I had a crappy week. I don't know if I'm going to be any good for this stream that we've planned, but let's see where it goes. It might have some rocky moments and some voice cracks, but we'll get a little bit of JV rigor in there. We'll get some Christianity, some Christianity theology in there, and we'll have us a conversation. And at the end of the day, and I think now this is why we have to have a conversation, because I was a little bit nervous for this. Ha ha ha. Even the extrovert. I was like, Matthew, follow the logos. Follow the logos. You know what in your heart has always been the guide, and you know the logos within you. It's a very Christian notion, and to attune the logos within you and the logos that is participating in, when there are two between it, or when there are two in my name, that makes me fearless. That says, hey man, you have love in your heart. I care for this. I care for you, Christian, the digital version that I know of you, even though that's pretty deep for today's technology. I wanted to just come in and play. That's the good metaphor we have. I just wanted to come in and play, and that's where I was saying is, in a weird way, is I needed the play, brother. I needed it.
Yeah, I agree.
Excuse me.
That's all right. The thing about that is, that's why I made a video. There was a young man, I can't remember the name of his channel. He went to Symbolic World, and then his critique was that he didn't feel like he was able to connect very well with other people there. And he mentioned me. It looked like Christian was connecting, and there's there's all sorts of reasons for that. I have my own trying to hold on to listening to the logos, to use your words, on what I'm trying to do and what I'm not, who I am and all this kind of stuff. Because it was intense, very intense on some of that level for me. But I had to come play, man. I had to connect. I had to. I don't know how to explain that. And you following that voice even today, like you're saying, like, this is you reaching out into this. It's almost, to Grim Grizz, you're reaching into Set, like, and you're saying, like, screw you, man. Like, I'm coming in, and this is no longer a one-way street. And we're doing something that you didn't maybe see or know, all those 40-year-olds, I don't know how old you are, but 35 or so. Yeah, like where we were fed all this stuff. And the thing is what we started feeding us, and whether the algo knew or the spirits of the algo knew what they were going to feed us for the last 5 to 7 years, like, it did something. And we're kind of connected to that, I think, and that's why we can just hop on here and start kind of like, start at 50 or 60 miles an hour in certain ways. It's like, for the people that are into this, and it's not sports, it's not games in a way, it's not these other things, weird, it's ideas or meaning or
Well, see, I think it's something more interesting, that because I think it's so obvious when you say it. It's meta conversation. Okay, it's these deeper ideas that, to where if there's something that I wanted to talk to you about Kevin Durant and how that related, that would be very, very easy for me to sit. There's a way for me to spin that yarn and then tie that in. And see, here's where I think the beauty, or one of the beauties of this corner, what we're doing is we're able to do that, take that little Kevin, hey, I had this Kevin Durant story over here. And usually in an everyday, blah, blah. And like you said, I think there is, in a Pageauian way, there's a place for that, right?
yeah.
And to where just, hey, there's a Kevin Durant. I watched Kevin Durant last night. He scored 35 points, blah, blah. Here you go. But then you can tie that into like, okay, but I'm just going off the cuff here. But you could tie that into like, okay, but here's the narrative of his legacy and where he grew up and what he wanted to do with his life, and you see how that's connected. So there's this fractal of like meaning that we can now play with. It's almost like this
Yeah.
it's almost like the playground has been opened up. Just keep that metaphor for us.
Well, because you also have to speak it so that you can, and that's part of what we're doing right now is the verbum is the Latin word for it, which is actually someone, a theologian used talking about the logos and
I like that.
there's that has to be, it has to be spoken or
Well,
told.
I love about spoken. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm an Italian extrovert. I'm the interrupter. The thing about spoken I love is there's an implicit embodied.
Yeah.
Spoken is implicit embodied. You cannot speak without embodied.
Yeah, that was part of my ego death was the saying the truth out loud. Having to, like that versus the being inside, like it was like trying to force its way out, and you can either choose to keep pushing that down, and so that was
Interesting.
an individual. You could say I was with God or something, but it was an individual embodiment of the saying out loud of the truth, and there was times I felt like I literally had to like. I was like, I can't say that.
Wow. That's so interesting because whatever notion you're talking about there, whatever you're describing, I don't have the same perspective on it, but I think it's the same notion because what I have something is well, it's exact my quote, right? It's the little quote I love to say is put on his tune, or he always said this, why we have to have conversations. There's something about I can do all, dude. I got crazy brain, bro. I got high cognition, this thing doesn't stop. But
Yeah.
there's something about when I get into there's another speed, or the speed isn't right, another depth, and it's a more satisfying. It's like the whole relevance realization enjoys itself. It's poetic system, right? It searches out and seeks instances that are good for it, and for it to thrive. It's like there's something about these conversations, and that when I get to explicitly, I'll say something and I'll do my little quote. I'll be like, man, I've been wanting to say that in the depths of my subconscious, in the edges of whatever this cognitive entity is that I am. I've been wanting to do it, but only embodied, explicit verbo gets it done, brother.
Well, verbo's the rental verbum.
Verbum.
I'm just kidding, dude. The thing that's like bringing up for me is like, this idea that I've had about what worship is, which is like, we have to compress the transcendent into a reality, and then through that we are able to kind of go back and look back, and that's kind of the idea. Think of an icon a little bit, but it's like, like we have to compress, and this is part of Peterson's even Vervaeke combinatorial explosiveness is
this is symbolism too, by the way.
Yeah, you have to into words. You have to compress all these ideas and this meaning into actual language. It's a compression, actually, because what's happening up here is something else. And when that happens, and the other way that we've done it for years is to compress those ideas into writing, and that's a powerful medium to do, because you're forming this nebulous or this ambiguous thing into some frame of order. You're also doing that with language, and then but the conversation is it's a dance, and so it's almost, there's an art to it, which is part of, I call this stuff conversation craft. That's like the titles on my video.
I heard that the other day, and I loved that.
And so there's that aspect of it, and I want to go back to relationships. When one of the things I started thinking about was the C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, and I can't Dorothy Sayers maybe, and there was maybe one other person, And, they would go back to the pub once or twice or three or every day, I don't know, after work. And I can't imagine the kind of conversations they were having at the pub. But they were these conversations, and that was this synthesis and this melding that I'm sure came into their work and into their lectures, and there's these ideas, and those things did only used to happen in the university. But what happens when digital brings the whole university, and what happens when, so yeah, these and then the students are getting that opportunity in the commons or in their study sessions. But what about the people then now that we went to digital Vervaeke, Peterson, and Pageau University and Paul Vanderklay University for 5 to 7 years? It's like, and you're not talking about it?
Yeah.
That's not okay. And so here we are. And that's a big part of how I feel, is that this is the natural part of a process that we're supposed to have whenever we take in information and knowledge. Is it we have to kind of it has to share. And then that goes into Grim Grizz and what there are a lot of them talking about right now, which is this kind of these flotillas of meaning, or these shared cognitions. Like, you better believe that Tolkien and Lewis were a shared cognition in their work. And Dorothy Sayers, like, how is that not possible? So I don't know, man. That's
I think it's one of the huge home runs of JV's cognitive science, extended cognition is the fourth E. You are extended out into these and really I think it kind of is even messier than that, because I think there's a how do I want to do this? There's like there's a distributed cognition that you participate in, which is your culture that you are embedded in. So that's the second E. And then there's like the post, which is the communities and technologies that you're utilizing, right? And that would be your extended. That's the fourth E. That would be like TLC, okay? Because in a weird Heideggerian sense, you could say we're thrown in here, but I chose, I've made a lot of choices and navigated to TLC. So it's definitely something that is. I wasn't just born into it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it is the I think it's probably the bridesmaid of kind of the JV speak, the distributed cognition. And what I would say too is that I think it gets into the Pageau, and I'm kind of freewheeling here, man. So we'll just see where this lands. But I think it gets to me on the Pageauian idea of attention, because I think distributive cognition is a lot more mysterious, because you're not as disciplined with who you're participating in distributed cognition as you think you are. Or let me just speak for myself. I'm not as disciplined, and I'll just do the lived experience thing. Like, I escape to these, comedy podcasts, and they just say the worst, most vile, most horrible thing, like on purpose and in the right context. And it's hilarious. And I laugh, I'm the worst person. Part of my street wisdom is, nobody.
yeah, that's real.
That's a real ego, right? The real ego death to realize, you're nobody. So yeah, I'll laugh along, but also they'll just say wild, insane things that I'm like, oh, I completely disagree, and then they'll be kind of half serious, and it's like, oh, I totally completely disagree. This is nonsensical. This has nothing to do with my worldview. I'm come back to Christianity, Christian here, blah blah. And so it's like and then there'll be moments where I'm like, I catch myself, and you got to befriend yourself, I think is very wise, but I'll catch myself and I'm like, is this good? Am I how good is this for my cognition right now? How good is me bathing my attention in this right now? Because I'm participating in this distributed cognition right now. I'm listening to the complete BS take that some millionaire comedian thinks he has some midwit insight into, and and I'll play along. I think life is kind of a wrestle, so I don't think there's any panacea or perfect answer, but yeah, I think that the networks we play in it's complex and it's mysterious and it's like I I get old and I'm just like, man, I think you just become more of an old man. You need discipline and you need these communities to kind of really hold you in check, or things will just things will get awry. As someone who works out, it's like trying to stay on top of a workout regimen by yourself. It's like good luck.
Mm,
Good.
yeah. Isn't that interesting though? Isn't it like that even goes to my little symbol of the campfire over here. That's campfire is great, but it's even better when you're there with a friend, you know. Um, it's even warmer. So yeah, man. I think that's kind of that's what I'm hoping that these things are. And so I guess I've got one last question for you, because something that I've learned in my short time here on YouTube doing this stuff is it's actually extremely powerful. But if you could say something to John Vervaeke, what would you want to say to him?
Um,
Wow. Um, I mean, I could do a super emotional me thing for sure. But I'd want to turn it to him. And actually, this is almost not even fair because a little people in TLC will reach out and get different communications. I got a chat thread, and I think I've got text with a David, Busiri, and we just kind of touched on this. And you know what I would tell him? As I would tell him to watch. Have you seen the movie Moneyball, Christian?
Hmm.
I tell him to watch the scene where Jonah Hill is showing Brad Pitt the minor league baseball player, first baseman, who hit the home run and rounded second and fell down. You know the scene?
Yep.
Basically, I would tell him is that, buddy, you've already hit your home run. You've already built your Silk Road. And yeah, I'd want him to he says he's on this pilgrimage, and I'm happy for him on that. That he's still got very much a spiritual burning, but I would also want him to realize that the achievement and the achievement has already been there. The Silk Road has already been built.
Yeah.
He's just kind of putting the ornamentation on it at this point, in my opinion.
Mm, man. Well, Matthew, this has been awesome, and I think that we'll do this again because I want to go down some more rabbit trails with you, and even going back to that very first time we were in that stream together, there were things that you talked about, that I want to hit on again, but I'm kind of crunched for time this morning, and now I'm a little sad right now about that. But thanks for sharing, like, your letting some masks come down or some walls come down and get into a emotional place. And I think that there's a lot of things on here that people will connect with. So I'm going to hit us a video bumper and we'll end the saying backstage because that's really cool to say. All right, dude.
Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to yours truly, a place we go to think out loud.